Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Saving the World Together podcast with Luke McMichael and Martin Resney. Today we have a special guest, Captain Sweep, otherwise known as Elijah Ignatieff. Not sure if I said that right, but Elijah, it's great to have you with us here today. I just recently met Elijah a few weeks ago, seen some of his videos online about new paradigm pathways. And a school of conscious communication is some of the things that we've learned about him and about his work. But we're really excited to have him here with us today as a guest, and we're really excited to learn about what he has to offer. So, Captain Sweep, I'll turn it over to you. You have the floor for a few minutes, and then we'll kind of bounce around some questions and ideas after that. So, what are you doing? What is your work all about? And give us a little introduction on yourself.
Well, I think that we can kind of come to a conclusion that our present day system is not really operating that well. And if anyone has been sort of following this during their lifetime, they might have come to the conclusion that we need to create something new. To build something in the old system, or the old paradigm, is going to have it stuck within all the rules and agreements and the processes that are already there. And so I've been working on an ideal system called the Inflow Matrix Operating System, and a tool set called the New Paradigm Toolkit. And the New Paradigm Toolkit are maps, card sets, game boards, processes, and software. And so looking at if we're going to, move from an old paradigm based on fear into a new paradigm based on love, which I think that we could all perhaps agree to, we have to have an operating system, a set of methodologies, and a set of tools to do so. And so that's been the focus of my research for the past 25 years. And most of the work I have has not really been seen by the world. And I've been a sort of a lone inventor who's been testing out the tools and figuring out the operating system, because it's based upon cyclical time. It's based upon moving from linear time to cyclical time, and that's sort of like if you're moving from a paradigm, there's some fundamental assumptions within that paradigm that are very different from the old paradigm. And so the assumption is that natural law or natural life is based on cycles. And if you look at this as the time, it's called the time translator. There's 9 cycles of time, going from the slowest to the fastest. And so if you look at the outside, you have the zodiac, and that's basically our whole lifetime. So if you study astrology and you have a birth chart and you can put it on there, basically we're born with this configuration. And then as we age, the planets keep moving. And then there's a relationship between those planets called transits that creates sort of markers in our life. Now, some people may think that astrology is a newspaper Saturday morning, read what Capricorn is. But, astrology is a very sophisticated science in a sense of cyclical measurement. And so that's on the outside. So that's your outside lifetime cycle. That's the container within this whole idea. Now, if you go to the next, the blue cycle, that's a year. That contains 13 moons. And, we're running on a 12-month system that isn't really mathematically sound. If you go 13 times 28, it's 364 days in a year, plus 1 day out of time with Jose Arguez within the Mayan calendar uses. And, most civilizations have been based on the moon cycle. And it was sort of destroyed by Rome. And I think the main reason they have these 12 months is to tax us and to get the money once. So then the blue is the year, and you go into the next one is the moon cycle. The aquamarine is the moon cycle. So you have your lifetime, you have your year, you have a moon cycle. And that's 28 days. And then the next cycle is a day, 24 hours. So this circle fits in that little square, and then the moon cycle fits in that whole little square. So you have these concentric circles, which again is a different way of thinking. Then you have sort of the midpoint. Now, what is on there right now? And I don't. Have you guys ever studied Jose Arguez's the Mayan factor, like the Mayan calendar at all?
Not much. No.
Well, it's a completely different worldview. And if you look at the Mayan, there's a huge. The Mayan elders have a different interpretation of it than Jose Arguez does, so that's quite different. But there's basically 20 energetic signatures. But if you look at the number 20, it's the first time the tetrahedron creates a whole system. If you have a tetrahedron, which to me is the base unit of the universe, put forward by Buckminster Fuller, and then you go to each corner and you fractal it, you've got 4 plus 16, which is 20. So the number 20 has significance, and I think that there's like a super team of 20 people. And so basically this is within Jose Arguez's worldview, each one of these is a person. So if you imagine a person, a team of 20, being one of these markers, and that's at the seasonal cycle. So there's a bit of a breakup of time, because you'd think the seasonal cycle would be, back here. But it's like the seasons are the main reference point for how we live life, right? If you're going to do a business, it's very different in the wintertime than the summertime. So you've got these people in the seasonal cycle, and then we go into the shorter time cycles, and the pink is an hour, which would fit in that, the day is broken up into hours. And then the hour is broken up into minutes. And then you have here the present moment. And the present moment, then you have timelessness. So there's a distinction between present moment and timelessness, and that's where you bring in levels of consciousness. And if you look at, do you guys know the book Power versus Force?
No.
David Hawkins? He has a scale of enlightenment from 0 to 1,000. And so he mapped out levels of consciousness. And you could add in, let's say, the 7 chakras. That's sort of levels of consciousness. There's different models that have sort of different levels of consciousness. So it's kind of like if you go to 90 degrees and you have, let's say, a time translated like this, and you have an axis here. Here now you have a levels of consciousness. So the distinction between the present moment now, let's say us right now, we're here, present moment, right? Now. But let's say we did ayahuasca together, blasted off, and all of a sudden we're in some other domain or level of consciousness. We just change our state of being in the present moment. So that's the distinction. And what it does is it gives the mind a structure that now combines time and consciousness, which I haven't seen anywhere else. And so if we're looking at, again, going to a new paradigm, and one based on fear versus love, it's essentially a different state of consciousness. So how are we going to do that? We have to have a mental model that gives the mind the way to do so. So this is the beginning of creating an operating system, because as space is to the body, time is to the mind. And so then what happened is I found that you could put concepts on the time cycles to give each time cycle a primary reference point conceptually for the mind. And I focused on business because business is the way the world sort of operates, and if you want to change something, you're going to change business. And so the idea that if you look at this map, which is the synergy wheel, and you look at the color coding, and you see it has purple, blue, aquamarine, green, yellow, I guess, okay, pink, orange, red, right?
Okay.
these are corresponding to these same time cycles. So what I found is this 9 is the same 9 as this, but in a different format, right? So now if you're looking at members of a team for a business team, the idea like marketing was related to the present moment. The services that you do is minute to minute. The synergy with your relationships is hour by hour. Then you get to the seasonal, and now it's your creativity in your products. With your products, you're going to be changing from season to season. And going to the green and operations, it's daily operations. And then if you go to your job and the lunar cycle, you can organize your job and the lunar cycle, seeing what do you have to do. Then you have the daily interactions with these different people on a minute-to-minute basis, right? So these all connect. And then at the yearly, it's infrastructure and your resources. So, as a CFO, you're going to be looking at your whole system's resource needs over the whole year. And that research, it's your lifetime, looking at the whole lifetime of you or your company. But then it's stewardship or leadership, it's a timelessness. So you're actually at a higher state of being to see how your whole company works. So this is a universal model that can run any business.
Okay.
And then if you look at these green conduits, I didn't load a map that was filled in, but this is where you put your values. So let's say at research, I have cooperation. And let's say at infrastructure, we have wealth. Let's say at learning or human resources, we have empowerment. Let's say at activities, we have simplicity. Let's say at creativity, we have inspiration. Let's say at relationships and synergy, we have passion, which is very different than if we had support, or if we had love, or if we had kindness. At services, let's say we have awareness. At marketing, let's say we have boldness. At stewardship, let's say we have integrity.
Okay. So let me throw a question there. So just from what I'm seeing, so the goal of all of this is to create a toolkit, a new paradigm toolkit that helps us understand how the mind works, from both the time perspective and the different levels perspective, right? So we're just trying to kind of group our different efforts, our mental efforts, in ways that can kind of help us synergize within our own head and within our own teams. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's the beginning of it. What we're creating is a language reference point to organize, business operations.
Okay.
In a manner that takes into account higher spiritual principles, like levels of consciousness. Because if you look at any business or any spiritual endeavor, it generally comes down to the values, right? We all learn about love, integrity, compassion. These words always keep coming up in terms of how humans develop or orientate ourselves. And I've heard so many times that they go, well, we need a new value system. We have to change our values, but then I don't see a methodology to do so. And so...
Okay. So this is an attempt then to kind of get people and businesses to see beyond the bottom line, to see beyond the just the numbers value, and try to see more intrinsic value in the entire system and the methodology and how we grow spiritually and grow mentally. So trying to put some kind of more value onto that, more focus on that than just the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I may, have you ever heard of Czech economist Tomáš Sedláček and his book Economics of Good and Evil?
No.
Because what you're talking about sounds to be in the similar framework, because what his main argument is, he's basically saying is that we should focus on the term goods, meaning things that are good. That what you're trying to do, what should be trying to do in economics is not just to compute numbers, but to try to deliver actually good things or determine what it is that's good for people that they want. to exist and therefore to use business to produce it and manage it. But also, I wanted to say it's very interesting to me because I have spent the last 6 years writing a book about astrology that's called Everything You Never Wanted to Know About Astrology. And it's just a bit of a journalistic, scientific, actually, look at how there is very probably some value or wisdom in those kinds of systems. So I really like the idea of using basically this temporal architecture, like using this framework of putting time or looking at how things work at different timescales. So I wanted to ask you specifically in regards to astrology. You mentioned transits, and you basically said that this is cycles that sort of repeat, and these ancient civilizations had some idea of what's coming. So what do you think astrologically? Because like these transits have assigned some meanings. They have assigned like this. They're in some signs, and some configuration of planets exist right now, or it's evolving in some direction. So what do you think about the current astrological state of time and the things that we are supposed to, according to astrology, be going through right now?
I've been spending a lot of time writing to, like, there's a lot of catch up for me to describe the maps, and I've been writing manuals. And so I've been very focused on my own work, and I'm at different times of my life. I've been, you probably know Robert Hand's book, Planets in Transit.
I think I've heard about it. Yes,
it's a book that you can actually track your transit. So if I'm, let's say, in a Saturn square Mars, basically for about 3 months my life is hell. So I agree with you. There are certain times in our life where these cycles affect us, and I haven't. We just went through the Lionsgate of 8/8. There's different, I guess, periods in a year where we're affected, but I haven't been tracking the larger movements except when I see it in TikTok or someone else tells me about it. But I mean, the thing is, we're in such a period of great change that, I mean, just even like coming into Aquarius.
Exactly. Pluto in Aquarius recently.
And I think that, what is it? We had a major one just a little while ago, right?
Pluto in Aquarius, like right as the war in Ukraine started.
Yeah, right. So Pluto in Aquarius. So these are markers, epoch markers, that are hugely affecting us.
Yeah.
That most people, don't know about. But they say that, millionaires don't hire astrologers, billionaires do. And in terms of timing, it's just, it's obvious. They just see when a certain pattern happens, when Mars and, Saturn have some sort of configuration, wars happen. And it's, I'm sure I'd like to ask you to tell us, what is happening right now.
Well, like I said, the Pluto in Aquarius is the big one. I think the transition's been, I think it's reaching a year now. So it's like this whole year, pretty much. We've already been in the Pluto in Aquarius. And it really coincided with the war in Ukraine again, because one of the things that I write about in my book that I sort of figured out, I tried to figure out something, because it really seemed methodologically that it should really be predictable, but many astrologers are not making very scientifically rigorous predictions about anything, unfortunately, even though I know they can, because the methodology of astrology allows it. So if you look at Pluto specifically, and just transitions of Pluto from one sign to another, then you find that it really marks the political epochs. Like just some of the transition years, you can just say the number of the year, like 1918, 1938. Like this just like matches the exact main big thing that happened. I think another one, recent one, was the financial crisis, 2009. I think it was another one of those. It's just like the Pluto changes, and the sort of orb, the period of time during which it's in a significant aspect to something, is like, 3 degrees or 3 to 5 degrees of angular distance. So it would be, in terms of Pluto, like 1 to 3 years. is like the transitional period. And right now we're in one of those again, and wouldn't you know it, there's another biggest conflict in Europe since World War II, and everything's suddenly changing again. And of course, I'm pretty sure you must be aware of like what the meanings of science generally are, and Aquarius is very much about future and futurism on changing things. I think the last time, because I sort of realized it when I was helping another friend of ours, Jeff Grobert, write a constitution for his project, Land-Based Capitalism. And I realized that the last time all of the constitutions were written was in the last Pluto in Aquarius. Then there's like the American Revolution type thing going on. And we also have all the UFO hearings and revelations all of a sudden that there's alien life and all this has been around. And it's specifically this year of the Pluto changing to Aquarius.
Yeah.
So
and it's
I think
also
it's pretty
been
obvious.
it's been a huge year for so many things. With the
AI.
ChatGPT and AI, of course, as well, has been huge this year. You know, we're very close to our artificial general intelligence. I think within the next 5 to 10 years myself, but it's going to very significantly change everything about the world in so many different ways, I believe. So it's definitely a time of change. I think we'll see more change in our lifetimes than any other generation has seen, probably times 10 or times 100 in just our lifetimes versus any other.
Because the funny thing about Pluto and
period.
Aquarius is it's exactly half of the Pluto cycle since the World War II, because that was Pluto in Leo. So I think sort of like in terms of bigness of events and turns in politics, it because opposition is basically one of like after conjunction, meaning it being the same, is basically the most important or significant or powerful aspect or closeness between 2 points. Actually. So yeah, so artificial intelligence, aliens, political sweeping changes.
It's I like the inflection point you had there in your first thing, where we're kind of coming from this old epoch, we're hitting this singularity, if you will, where basically we have two options. We either progress and come up with a new paradigm based on, you know, love and mutually working together, mutual beneficial relationships, or we could collapse into some kind of state of total chaos and anarchy and oblivion, essentially. I don't think there's much room in the middle. I mean, the status quo will not last more than 10 or 20 years, if that long at this point. We're either going to
the period of Pluto in the sign.
Yeah, this is probably the most important period humanity will ever see. We either, you know, go almost transhuman, we all evolve into a new species perhaps, a new paradigm, if you will, or we completely annihilate ourselves, which is it's a bit sad and scary to think that those are our two options. But you know, that's just the way the signs are set. They're reading, no matter how you look at it. Almost anyone from any background, if you look at it logically, scientifically, religiously, astrologically, they're all pointing in the same direction, that we've got to do something different. We've got to change our paradigm. So it's good to hear that we're kind of all in agreement with that, and that the clearer that becomes on what that new paradigm looks like, I think the better chance we'll have of agreeing that this is what we want to do together to make it happen.
So I would have one specific question then. So if you are for the change of paradigm or want a new paradigm to exist, so what is your vision of the future? What is your idea of some content of that new paradigm?
Well, if you look at the old paradigm, the main cell, the main structure has been the corporation. And have you seen the documentary, The Corporation, the Canadian documentary?
Not that one specifically, but I've seen a lot of similar ones, let's just say. And I've been reading up on, you know, the Venus Project and the new resource-based economies and tons zeitgeist movements, all these other documentaries that have been huge through the last few decades. So I'm very much aware of the problems with corporations and capitalism and how we can kind of start to overcome them little by little, from the me to we mentality of just trying to understand the world better.
What it did that was different from other movies was it pointed to the organizational structure as the problem. And so it looked at the traits of a psychotic individual, and it had the same traits as a corporation. And so if you look at, you know, how we're going to, let's say, get out of this mess, we need a new cell. We need a new methodology to organize together in business. One, to me, that does take into account levels of consciousness, and does take into account an ethical value system, and does take into account cycles of time. So the operating system that I'm putting forward here does that. And then there's a structure which I call the shared knowledge community, which is a way of bringing a certain number of groups together. And it, again, I focus a lot on number because most of the stuff I'm working on is based on sacred geometry. And the assumption is that if you organize your mind, you align your mind using sacred geometry, then you're actually aligning with the laws and the principles of the universe. And that the old paradigm is based upon a man-made construct that is not in alignment with the laws of the universe. And so it has to be, it will self-destruct. And so I think, the First Nations of the world have always aligned themselves with nature and being in balance and harmony with our surroundings. But the Western mind doesn't, because it's looking to exploit. So here we have, I don't know if you can see it all.
Yep.
But basically it's 12 teams of 12 people. They say that, under 150 people, you don't get to know sort of a community, and that the number 144 has a very powerful significance. So there's,
12 to the power of 2.
yeah. So there's 12 originators, and I consider myself an originator. An originator is another name for an inventor. 12 entrepreneurs, 12 teachers, 12 tech gurus, 12 artists, 12 healers, 12 planetary guardians, which you might bring up later on, 12 illuminators, 12 mediators, 12 facilitators, and 12 youth, and 12 elders.
That's very, yeah. I love the number 12. 12, right back to the 12 apostles and the 12 disciples. There's just so many 12s through the history of mankind that it's a very significant. The dozen eggs is just kind of an interesting concept. Why dozen eggs? Why not 10? Why is 12 such a cool number? Why do we have a number for 12 but not all the other numbers?
Well, I have a theory in the book that I've recently published that is basically similar to what mathematicians today say, who say that we should teach children to count in a system that's 12-based system, not 10-based system, and that the argument is practical. It is that it's a highly composite number. It has more functional, useful divisions than 10 has, and that's probably a big reason why I believe the ancient mathematicians were using that number heavily, because they were also not using algebra. They were drawing geometry, most of the calculations, and that's what you basically do through having a circle and dividing the circle. And so division was a big part of even the numerological operations in general. So I believe that there's like a practicality to the number, and I really like the idea of aligning with the universe. Even like as a political scientist, as I was writing the book, I found that somebody's calling it cosmopolitics, I think. And the cosmopolitics is like the idea that mainly the ancient civilizations had, that you should align with the nature. Like you should align with your best understanding of how the universe works. And in the modern times, it's usually been with the tracking advances in physics, so it didn't stop. But it sort of went into postmodern relativism type, because relativism was sort of reaction to the discovery that, of theory of relativity. Like it's sort of always some sort of adaptation of what our latest learning about the universe is, but it really went away. Like modern physics went away from cosmic cycles or natural cycles, then the whole new discoveries went away from natural cycles, and so modern politics are based on linear time, which is that's sort of supposed to infinitely progress, and it's completely untied to any natural cycles, and that's why we have like escalating climate change. It's just like the economic engine is just exponentially increasing and has no way or plan how to stop ever doing that, and that's just unnatural. So I 100% agree with that assessment as a political scientist.
So what kind of reception have you had so far? You say you've been doing it for almost 25 years, and just recently you're putting together all these models, I assume. How much of a following have you kind of gotten so far, or about how is it going?
Well, I'd say it's work in progress. I find right now that the world might be ready for it. I mean, even to go from essentially organizing in circles rather than squares is a huge leap. To time, to have it in time cycles, multiple time cycles, is a huge leap. To have it in multiple levels is a huge leap. Like for most people, um, you have to have an abstract thinking mind. You have to want to think in models. And so most people don't do that.
Okay.
So I mean, so I'd say, and also that I haven't really done much to get the work out there. Every once in a while, I sort of pop my head out and then just go back to research. So most of my time has been doing research.
Have you had a lot of people reach out to you as I did, just through podcasts? Have you been doing a lot of podcasts like this, or just a few?
No, I've done a couple with people who were just starting out, but
Okay.
but no, I've been pretty obscure, pretty obscure.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool, and I hadn't heard about it at all before, and I just kind of saw it pop up on my feed. As far as you were talking with Nova McCourt about, I guess, future possibilities and future cities and how a better future world might look like. And I just kind of found out about you there, Captain Sweep. That's an interesting name. Let's dig deeper, and got all the TikTok videos, and it's interesting. You can kind of dig deeper on a person and get to know them and feel like you know who they are a little bit just from their
Also,
online presence.
why Captain Sweep? What's
Well,
the origin story for that?
I think that came after 9/11,
Oh,
when I sort of declared my piracy in terms of losing all faith in government institutions. I mean, another thing is I'm very much let's say an activist. Like, I've been trying to protect old growth forest trees or dolphins or, well, anything that comes to my heart, and been, I might be Canada's worst activist. I mean, I've had no luck there. And so it's like you're seeing this world and you're seeing all these things that you don't agree with, and you're wanting to change them or transform them. But then when you try to, you realize what a huge task it is. You're faced with the immense infrastructure of this whole paradigm. And what the paradigm does is it attacks you. It attacks anything that is a threat to it. So I thought if you're trying to do something good, wow, you'd be supported and you'd have all the support from everyone around you. But it's not that way. Goodness is actually attacked. So I've been living a very sort of on the fringe lifestyle. I'm not that, even though corporations might be the ones that might use this the best, I'm not that attracted to that mentality. I find that the people who, let's say, are the most advanced in certain ways, you can't go the normal route because you're going to be so influenced. Like, if someone funds you, they say you can only do it this way. If you're working in the old paradigm, you got to keep it like this. And so if you're a real inventor, you got to remove yourself from everything. And the more that you remove yourself, you become a crazy person, or you become someone that no one understands. So Captain Sweep was a pirate wizard. He became a character for me because I just didn't know how to deal with reality. I mean, it just, we're killing ourselves. Like, we're treating the place we live horribly. Everyone's just constantly just trying to grab this money, and it has never made sense to me. And so to get to a point where you're trying to do something impossible, which essentially is what I've been trying to do, is you're sort of left with no other options.
Yeah. Just to throw a quick solution out there from our side, something that we've keep coming back to in 2 years of doing this podcast and almost 20 years of research, trying to come up with like one simple solution to almost all the world's problems. The one we keep coming back to is some form of universal basic dividend that kind of makes it so money isn't as important for anybody because everyone's got at least a bare minimum level met, where everyone's got food to eat, shelter, the bare minimum, so that they don't have to work a job they don't want to work, and they can basically do whatever work they are passionate about. And it would just kind of help the whole world get that safety net, that we have the bare minimum met. Now it's just about sharing and growing and doing things we actually care about because we don't have to worry about money so much anymore. So I like it. I've been, most of what I do kind of always leads me back there to some kind of universal care system or universal minimal support system of some kind. And I like to think of it as a dividend because it's our basic right to the commonwealth, to the common resources of the world. And if we could just somehow get that kind of going and get people to accept that, then so many other problems, I believe, would kind of disappear as a result. So,
Well, could I challenge that?
yeah, please do.
Of course, please do.
Because I think what they're heading for, to me, they're heading for digital IDs, central bank digital currency.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know, I mean, in Canada, what happened was the truckers, as soon as the truckers did something which the government didn't like, they actually went into their bank accounts and turned them off.
Yeah.
And so if there is going to be some kind of universal basic income, from what I can understand, it'll come from the government. And then what'll happen is there'll be sort of the same thing. If you do something the government doesn't like, they'll turn off your money.
Understood. And I agree that that's a problem that needs to be solved in some ways first, maybe as the same time as it's going. But it can't be just a Canadian system either. It has to be kind of worldwide for it to work well. So the only way it works worldwide is with some kind of worldwide democratic public bank or public government of some kind that's run by the people for the people, not run by a guy at the top. And it has to be an elected board of directors in some way, right? And that's the challenge.
Well, I would agree with you that in terms of if you had a banking system that was run by the people, that would be very different.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're...
As we all know right now, that isn't the case.
No.
Well, it is somewhere in like small limited examples of people-run banks exist, but obviously the system as a whole doesn't really like to promote that possibility too much because that is a real challenge to the power of the system.
Yeah, that's how the current powers that be control us essentially. So if we can somehow take that control back, at a small grassroots level to start with, but eventually with the goal of having some kind of federalist, public world banking system run by the people for the people, I think that would almost obviate the need for local or for federal governments if you could have some kind of worldwide banking system that supports good companies that do good things and can kind of prove that they're adding to the public good and they're following, and it's all transparent. Everything they do is kind of public knowledge. You don't have to worry about monopolies if monopolies are owned by the people, and they benefit everybody instead of just a few people at the top. And you constantly change up the executive and make sure that the executive are all accountable and transparent with everything they do, every decision that's made.
So Elijah, how do you think the transition should or could happen to something that's a better paradigm?
What I would suggest with a shared knowledge community is with the originators and the artists, that's where the creativity comes to create new products and to create whatever it is that the shared knowledge community is bringing to the world. Now, an idea is that it's like if you look at the stuff I have, I could, once this thing I have gets going, it could support thousands of people. There's enough to go around. So the idea of being like, let's say within the shared knowledge community, I don't need billions. I think it's horrendous that people take billions out and people are starving.
Yeah.
That there's certain, I might become wealthy. Maybe, I've lived so simply that it does, money doesn't solve problems, right? It's more your connections with people and the love that you have with the people around you. To me, that's more important. So I would think within the shared knowledge community that the community acts as a wealth generator, and it has like the infrastructure and the marketing to help. Like, I don't want to do marketing. I don't want to do accounting. I don't want to touch paperwork. Like, there's a lot of reasons why I haven't got ahead because I'm one person and I just can't do everything. And I need a shared knowledge community to exist. I really do. And so the assumption is that maybe 5 or 10 people create enough wealth for the community that everyone gets what you're saying. Like there's a basic income. Where I wouldn't even call it a basic income. I would just say pay for it, like your rent's paid, your food's paid. You're not paying anything because the community is taking care of that. And it's an open book accounting, meaning if somebody's just draining the community and just spending lavishly, like it's all on their accounting, but everyone, begins to live within a lifestyle that is good for everybody. And if we actually have trust amongst people and love and these higher values, we treat each other better. And what's happening in the world right now is we're not treating each other well. They've killed trust, and there's just insanity. And so I think in the past, in a smaller village where everybody knew each other, and they grew up together, it was a much different mindset around how people treated each other. Like, if you have a good neighbor, you treat a good neighbor well. It's natural.
Yeah, agreed.
So the idea is that, in agreement with what you're saying, is that we eliminate the need for money as this guy to pay your bills every month. We figure as a community how to become wealthy, and this becomes a model. If you times 144 times 1,000, you got 1,000 shared knowledge communities. That's your 144,000 people in the Bible.
Right.
There's your prophecy. I think a small group of awakened people can totally transform the world, but they have to be organized together. We're isolated. We're alone. Everyone's got a piece of the puzzle. We need to come together in some structure to connect the knowledge, to share the knowledge, such that we can create this new world.
Sign me up. I'm ready. I've been very much trying to do this in my own local community. I'm pretty close. I mean, I have 6 kids, so I'm hoping they'll be part of my 12. At some point in the future, if I can get them to live nearby, bought the house across the street and stuff, just to try to create a little intentional community here. So if anyone watching this wants to be a part of Zootopia, my own personal attempt at this, please reach out. Let me know. I can definitely subsidize your flight or whatever to just get you here and see if we can make this work. Captain Sweep, have you had any luck? How many people? So you're looking for 144,000 planetary guardians. Obviously, we'll start with 144, or maybe even just 12. Have you had many people sign up, or what would it take for me to become a planetary guardian?
Well, you met Nova, right?
Yes, Nova. So is he one of your 12, or one of your initial 12?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people I've met over the years, but I can't say that I've even started yet.
Okay.
I find that everything I've done has been on my own funding, and everything I've done has been like, there's 2 ways to do something. You can do something using what you have in the moment to do the best that you can, versus having everything that you need to build something. And so I've spent most of my time in the world of design. So I've got tons of prototypes. I've got game boards. I've got card sets. I've got this conscious communication card set that I've got to the point of a box. Haven't finished the manual yet. So I mean, I'm an inventor with a lot of different prototypes that hasn't come to the completion. So I'm in a position of I've just been preparing to get to the point where when the people or resources do come in, I have something that's ready for them. And I found that at different times when I've gone into the world and attempted to do things, that it takes a lot. It takes you need a lot of support.
Yeah.
Again, in areas which I'm not that strong in, to do like so. It's kind of like, I think we're coming to that point where there's a lot of people like me that have a big piece of the puzzle. They can't do it by themselves. And I mean, for me, like, again, Captain Sweep, if you probably ask most people, it's a lot of times I have a turban in my head, I have a wizard's cloak, and I'm looking like a wizard, right? And in Canada, that pretty much creates your credibility to 0 and your craziness at about 100%. And whenever I've gone into these events, we never use my work. It's always, if you look at Occupy or you look at different activist situations, they don't want to use all this stuff. So it's like this seems to be made into a software system. Nova and I have gone about 60% on one called Chat Stream, where you can change a convo type, change a value, create a goal, create a point score, and take teams to go from one conversation to another conversation. Like if you start out in a brainstorm, then you go to a critical analysis, then you go to design specs. Basically, you're taking people through a process to figure things out. And that's what these tools are for. But again, me and Nova did that on our own. And Nova, he's in school, he's got, family. He's, it's a lot of these people are doing big things with no support. And then you see freaking government spend $20 million on something that never works, never gets anywhere. And a whole bunch of people got rich, but nothing was created. And so when you're an inventor, you get very resourceful and you get very good at creating things from nothing, but you're not used to getting help.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I hear 100%. Like that's very similar to the, what Martin and I are experiencing with our whole Saving the World Together, I guess, movement, if you will, where it's really just the two of us, but we've had, dozens of people kind of show interest and had many guests so far that are interested, but it's just how do you take it from kind of a grassroots into an actual business or nonprofit or something that's going to actually make a difference out there and start to resonate and expand. So I think we're very close to, our efforts being in line with each other. We actually have Nova coming on in 2 weeks, a little preview for that. We're excited to hear about his system and we're going to talk more about the software. I'm in IT myself. I've been an IT specialist for 18 years at the local steel plant doing just various kinds of IT work for them. But I'm looking to, expand that and continue to build upon this work in any way I can. I'm ready to kind of make it a full-time job whenever the time is right and whenever things align for us. So it's just about, like you said, building that base and being ready to take off when the world says it's time. And I hope it's time. I hope it's time very soon because it's an exciting work to be a part of.
Yeah, because I believe that as astrologically speaking, but also just generally speaking, that until it is the right time for something, it's not going to work. But when the time comes for it, then suddenly the things have a tendency to align, and stuff that looked impossible suddenly is the only thing that can work. So I'm not discounting that such a time is coming for these kinds of things, because I believe all the signs, again, astrologically, but also generally, are pointing to time being right for these kinds of efforts finally.
Well,
right.
I think.
Well, so I think that was great having you here today. Is there any final comments or words or things you'd like to share with our audience? Where can they find out more? Where should people go?
They can send an email to planetaryguardians@proton.me. They can, if they have interest in what I'm showing, just get in contact. I mean, I'd like to be in further interest and discussion with you guys. I mean, again, it's like if you don't have many and you find some, it's like, okay, well, how can we collaborate? How can what I have help you, and how can you help me, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I'd like to thank you too. I understand what it takes to hold the space and to be sort of pioneers and light bearers in the dark space. And I really enjoyed myself here today. I found this to be very a great discussion, and I really appreciate your ability to act as, again, interviewers, plus bringing in your own insights and intelligence.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we'll definitely continue to think about how we can synergize and how we can work together. Martin, is there any final comments or questions that you'd like to throw out there for everybody before we close?
My final comments or questions. I think that if your thing is being a wizard pirate, I think you should try to approach the Dungeons and Dragons community. I think they would be much more receptive to that kind of person communicating ideas.
I definitely fall in that category. I've been a fan of D&D my whole life, and Martin and I both do Magic the Gathering as a card game kind of based on that.
I love that game.
We're huge fans.
I love that game.
Huge fans. I've been a fan my whole life. So yeah, you got the right audience here from our perspective. Hopefully our audience is very receptive as well to the ideas, and just can't say enough for how great it is to just be able to share these ideas, to be able to have different guests and talk with you. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody who was able to watch this today. Please comment, let us know what you liked or didn't like, and how we can continue to make good presentations for you. And let's continue on together. Let's save the world together, guys. Thanks.